are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you very much. How are you doing today, Mr. Williams?
Doing great, thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and actually, I was just listening to one of your podcasts, and you were speaking about how in the morning you were speaking about how you've been to the gym, and I was just out for 2 hours hiking in the hills, so I'm feeling great too, you know?
That's awesome. I didn't work out today. Sundays are usually my rest days. They're my day of rest. I just kind of like to kick back and relax. But I did a half hour on a stationary bike today. That's kind of a rest day for me. Just move the legs a bit and then stretch.
Oh yeah. Good.
Yeah. Where were you hiking?
I'm living in Utah, in southern Utah, right next to Zion National Park, and within half an hour or 10 minutes from the house, we have areas just we can explore, and, so no trails, just off scrambling over rocks, little canyons, stuff like that, It's really sweet.
That's real cool. I just yesterday spoke with a couple from Utah. The episode aired like maybe 2 weeks ago once this airs, but it was yesterday when I spoke to them. And
Okay.
yeah, that's really crazy. What a crazy coincidence. Me and my fiance, we're kind of planning little things to do, maybe for like some sort of not like an immediate honeymoon, but a little time after. We were thinking about places to go and drive down to in the States. I'm in Vancouver in BC, in Canada here, but Utah is one of the places we wanted to drive to around where you're talking about, like Zion Park is like something I'd love to check out.
Yeah, well, let me know when you're coming. I'll be happy to show you around.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
And actually, I've spent many years in Vancouver, so I'm Canadian actually, and so I know Vancouver super well,
Yeah, I'm actually in Richmond. I'm just south of Vancouver. You're probably familiar with it.
Yeah. We used to have an office on Granville Island when it was way back before it became famous, So
Yeah. Now it's probably rent is 100 times it's what it was back then.
that's right. Yes.
And that's barely an exaggeration. So for people that are just kind of tuning in, if you've listened to an episode, I kind of just jump into it. I don't really do much of an intro, but for people that are tuning in, they never heard of you, kind of give them like a short introduction on like who you are, what you're all about, where they can find you, that kind of stuff. Because I like that you're not on Instagram. I will say that.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So, yeah, my name's Martyn Williams, and born in Liverpool, England, but always had a thirst for adventure, which ended up bringing me to the Yukon as a teacher, teaching native kids in little remote villages. From there, I started into adventure guiding, so ran adventure guiding companies in the Canadian North and out of BC too. And that led then, so this curiosity about what's next then led to then moving to other parts of the world to guide. And so ended up creating an airline in Antarctica to guide ski trips to the South Pole, climb the highest peak in Antarctica, stuff like that, which then led me to guiding on Mount Everest as a guide. And then as in 2000, I was wondering what's next. And I realized nobody had ever gone from the North Pole to the South Pole into human power. And I could get young people from around the world, train them, and we could do this journey. So it was like a 3-year project. The journey was 35,000 kilometers, took us 9 months. We had all sorts of epic adventures on the way. And we ended up getting to the South Pole for the beginning of the millennium, And then after that, I was thinking, well, what's next? Then I actually decided, or I met a Hindu monk, became interested in yoga. So I went off to India for 10 years and studied, the Enlightenment sciences, yoga, meditation, all that sort of stuff. And then coming back from that, I'm now coaching various people on, various businesses, typically in terms of what is human performance, our lives, 40% of our life is work. And if we want to have a joyful, fulfilling life, how do we have joyful, fulfilling work? And what's the interface between work and life? And how do we make that joyful and fulfilling,
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit about me.
Man, that is hilarious. everything in there. Sorry, I could unpack from like just sit here and talk, but I just had a funny conversation the other day with my future brother-in-law, and we were talking about he's a nurse. He's starting his nursing career. And there's this like one person that he's describing that he works with without giving too much detail, but a fellow nurse, and their bedside manner is just ridiculous. And I literally just like looked at him and I go, have you ever thought to just ask this person, like, what are you doing here? Like, why would you choose to do a job where you're just like kind of miserable and you're not happy? And you, like, obviously that impacts the people around you. So, like, why are you choosing to do this to yourself? But that just literally what you said right at the end exactly reminded me of that conversation. But wow, a heck of a story you have. That's
Yeah, and I really like, I really like how your podcast, you're talking about mental health, human performance. So feel free to ask, I that's sort of really that's my love, and
yeah.
so I'm really interested in in dialoguing with you back and forward about all this.
Yeah, yeah. How did you have always just consistently that sense of adventure, that sense of pushing yourself through these kind of physical feats? Was that since you were a young boy, or was there like a turning point where that happened?
Um, I think looking back now, I can really see that it's almost part of me, this massive curiosity, what's possible, what's next. So um, I think I feel very lucky to have had this curiosity and then had also, I guess the, oh, sorry, hang on a second.
Yeah, no, we lost your video, but yeah, there we go. You're good.
Okay. Um, the, yeah, the curiosity, and then also I guess from my family, they encouraged curiosity, so it didn't have anything. I had very little to stop me. So I really see that in early childhood, just the way my early childhood was shaped, it really encouraged me to be curious, which then led to me following the curiosity. So at times I've been, we mentioned Granville Island or sort of Vancouver earlier, and at times I've been, basically homeless on Granville Island, starting a business, just totally. And we go dumpster diving on Granville Island because there's a market there with all this fresh food, right? And so every evening we go over there. We'd pull out, the potatoes and the carrots and go back on our little camp stoves, boil up a soup, so that we could start an adventure company. So I've seen that if I look back, I was often not constrained in my exploration.
So like, why not just get a 9 to 5? Like when you're explaining an experience like that, most people would be like, hey, get a job, like you like, not to be blunt, but you know what I mean? Like it's more of a compliment. Like it's astonishing to have be in a place like that and kind of the way you describe it, and then still having this like super vivid dream of just like, no, we're doing this. Like this isn't an option. Is that, correct me if I'm wrong?
Yeah, no, you're totally on the right track. Yeah, yeah.
And so for you, what do you think fostered that kind of mentality of just like, it didn't even come to like your mind, like, oh, I should just get a job, then I could pay rent and I could get a nice stable place to live.
Yeah, I think the curiosity was stronger than the desire for security.
Wow.
And also though I do remember as a kid, and so maybe this is part of it, is that getting back on a bus, having been out in nature with buddies and laughing and joking, having a great old time, getting back on a bus and looking down this bus at 40 faces, all sort of with a sort of grim sort of look on their face, trudging through life type thing. So there's a part of me, I think, rebelled against the possibility of me trudging through life.
Mhm. Yeah, just kind of like wading through the river, kind of.
That's right. But now because in India, for instance, as a monk, we would spend hours and hours in meditation, doing all these things, which, so I now realize that wherever I am, um, I can view it as trudging through life, or I can view it as as a beautiful thing, so now I'm less daunted now by the whole idea of a 9 to 5 or whatever. It's like, no, whatever I want to do, I can do.
Wow. That must be a Utah thing, because I should introduce you to the people that I was just speaking to. You'd really like them. But out of curiosity, another random question. When did you come from? My mom was born in Blackburn, Lancashire, and she moved to Canada pretty young. When did you come to Canada from England?
So I was 21 when it came,
Uh,
and so I came. I just qualified as a teacher and got a job in the Yukon. I was teaching. Even though I was trained to teach high school phys ed, the job I was offered was grades 2 to 6 in a 3-room school in a little village in the Yukon where most of the kids were native, and I was teaching. And so this was again, if I look back at my life, I really see that there are these pivotal moments in life when we have our perceptions of who we are and what we're doing, et cetera, et cetera. So I ended up in this little village, and the native kids were totally at ease with -40 and -50 degrees, and living in a little cabin. And one of the good examples of again this mind shift and about expanding our mind is that all the 2 and 3-year-olds were handling knives, and they were chopping up moose meat, and it was normal, and yet in my regular life, parents protected their children from knives, and don't touch and blah, blah, blah. But here with kids very skillfully handling very sharp knives, cutting up moose meat and things like this. So what I see is that in terms of expanding who we are in the world, when we experience different cultures, different places, different situations, we expand who we are and what our capabilities are of,
That's really funny, actually. I was talking yesterday, and my one of the guys I do flooring with, he was talking about how he takes his grandson, who's 2 years old or 3 years old, gives him a drill and screws, and he's taught him to put screws into boards and
Oh,
such.
sweet.
It's hilarious. But it's so. What were you already doing? Kind of very adventurous things, going out in the wild, in the wilderness, enjoying the outdoors when you were in England? Or was this kind of your first exposure to it, going to a place like the Yukon where there frankly just isn't a ton to do inside, right? Like is that right or no?
Yeah. So as I was 12 and 13 years old, I was already heading off on my own, and so I would attempt to hitchhike into the mountains and then get stuck. And so I'd end up, at night. Now it's a Friday night and it's now getting dark, and I'm looking for somewhere to sleep, and it's raining lightly. And so I'm curling up in a telephone booth or underneath a bridge, and so this sort of, that was an adventure. Many people would say, that's totally stupid. That's nuts. Or that's silly. But to me, it was what I loved to do. Was exploration.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much different than just going camping. So it's just a little early, but who knows, man? I think that's really cool. So getting to the Yukon, and then you were you already doing kind of guided exploration at this point, or just kind of solo freestyle like normal?
So
This is when you're elementary school teacher, correct?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So let me back up for a minute, because it ties in with also about, again, I'm thinking about your listeners and about this whole idea of going for goals. So by age 16, we'd gone to the Alps with my parents, and I'd seen mountain guides, and I'd said, but to my dad, I want to become a mountain guide. And my dad had said, well, we're from Liverpool. Mountain guides are taught by their fathers in Switzerland how to become a mountain guide. It's impossible, And so, but I held on to this idea. So lo and behold, now I'm in the Yukon, which is, thousands of miles away from Liverpool. But I've been climbing and to a pretty good level. And I get a phone call saying, we need a mountain guide in the Yukon, and we believe, you've got some skills. Do you want the job? So what I see is, and I see this pattern happening throughout my life, when I set a goal for something, I have a bit of an idea. Often it takes a couple of years, but the path to realize it can be totally circuitous. It's not a straight line, as in, I want to start this business, just, step 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. It's often the circuitous path that goes, in this case, halfway around the world, right? But often it ends up coming to fruition. So the whole idea of just, for listeners, I'd be saying, when you have those goals, hang on to them, and work with them and allow them to, to flower in your inner space, allow them to develop,
Yeah. Okay. Now a random tangent off that. When you have people in your life, so say you get this goal in your head. I want to become a mountaineer. And you have your dad who says, hey, I think you should. Maybe he's not saying, maybe he did use the word impossible, but basically what he was saying is it's going to be rather difficult. That's kind of the message he gives you, right? He's saying you should at least double think about this a couple times before you do anything drastic. And that seems to be a common theme. Sometimes like you tell your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your teacher, your boss at work, your friends, hey, I want to do this thing. I want to get in shape. I want to start a business. I want to make a change in my life. It's so common where people are like, are you sure? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And it's almost justified because they don't have any proof. Like if you were to look at all the things they've witnessed you do, is it in alignment to that thing? It's usually not, right? Because it's usually a drastic change.
That's right. Yes.
So what's your stance on that? Or do you have any takes on that in terms of, are they justified in asking questions like that or having that quote unquote, maybe unmotivating or uninspiring response? Or how do you respond to that? Is that something you just put in your pocket and use for fuel? I'll kind of shut up if is that clear question.
Yeah, it's a clear question. So then my approach would be more, if does it feel right? What does my gut say about this response? If my gut doesn't respond, if that response doesn't resonate with me, I'm going to shove it to the side. I'm not going to pay attention to that feeling. And then, but then in terms of, those, how do I move forward? Definitely I think this is some of the best advice I can give anybody is super small steps. The smaller the step, the better, and because what I see is that all those thoughts are also in us, right? And they take our confidence. So how do we develop confidence to move forward? Every time we take a step, we get a little bit, it's like incremental confidence. So every time we take a small step towards a big goal, we're increasing confidence. And confidence is such a big factor in our ability to do things,
Yeah.
And I figure I've never, people ask me, well, you must work hard. And my response is, I don't feel I've ever worked hard. I've always worked from enthusiasm, So, and the result can be hard. What to other people appears hard work, but for me, it's just enthusiasm,
Yeah.
So when we have that confidence, that fuels enthusiasm, so there's an interlinking between confidence, enthusiasm, and desire and goals. They're all interlinked,
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. I've kind of gone through in my life, like kind of this, just shifting careers. I'm sure you've worked in many different areas and just done odd jobs just to get by sometimes. And I've done the exact same thing, working in restaurants, working in sales, working in gyms, working in construction. That's what I do now. I'm a carpenter by trade. But, I feel like that all the time. I really did have this kind of feeling as a teenager when I was working in the trades as like, I don't want to be dirty. I don't want to be working hard. I don't want to be like putting in what I consider now to just be an honest day's work, but it felt like a burden. I was like, I want to be sitting in my own office with a nice tie, cup of coffee, maybe an assistant. That was what I was like chasing after. And, I realized the whole time I'm doing that, I'm just sitting there thinking about, I just want to go to the gym. I just want to go work out. I want to play some sports. I want to be social. I want to be outside. And I was thinking about like most of these things are basically what working in construction is. If you look at it that way, you're really just getting paid to exercise and build things, which I like. I even as a kid, that was what I asked for as toys from my parents, was like Legos. I wanted to build shit. That was always like a thing I liked to do. So it kind of became like a prodigal son story with like coming back into construction. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, actually, I totally resonate with what you're saying, because in my coaching, I'll find there'll be two people in the same role, and one person will be having a lousy time, and the other person will be having a great time, exact same situation. And it's about that, you stepping back from it and going, oh, wow, hey, rather than me, I'm working out. Look at how fit my body feels. Look at how much fun I have with this measuring. Look at how, let's gamify every aspect of this so that I come home. So in some ways I look from the lens of fulfillment. How do I feel fulfilled doing this, right? And so now, even now, say for instance, if I approach something like accounting, my annual, we all have our annual taxes, stuff like that, and now I've shifted my whole approach to that. I go, hey, let me gamify this. Let me have fun. Let me be present with it. Let me just have, it's either going to be, some hours of me muttering and swearing, or some hours of me enjoying, right? And so how do I shift my state so that it switches from suffering to enjoyment,
I always make that joke. I always, whenever I have to do paperwork, taxes, and everything like that, I always go, I never became a carpenter to do paperwork. That's for sure. But that's so going from the Yukon. Sorry, I'm still trying to piece together a nice memoir for myself.
Yeah.
But as we go into the Yukon, you're teaching young kids there. These kids are like me, playing with little knives and just kind of hanging around. They seem, I guess, what you would say, very sturdy people, very hardy, very durable. It sounds like, like in a place where if your car breaks down at night and you're stuck outside, you gotta struggle to survive that kind of environment.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that increases the camaraderie between people, the neighborly kind of feelings, because here in Vancouver, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that'll pull over if you're on the side of the road with the hood of your car up. Whereas I'm assuming there everyone is stopping, being like, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" Is that kind of the vibe?
Yes, and because my expeditions took me around the world, I've seen the same thing everywhere I go. In the more isolated communities, so I've been with the Inuit, I've been with the Sherpas in Nepal, etc., etc. The wilder the place and the smaller the population, the more there's caring, and there's more the sensitivity about everybody, and and how we function together. Increased population density, and the caring goes down, 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 right? And so you put more people together in more dense areas. Typically, the caring becomes less and less, unfortunately.
Yeah, people become. I want to try and avoid using this word, but it seems the most appropriate. But people become disposable almost. They become a nuisance. They become in the way. Even myself, I fall into that mindset. Sometimes I lose my patience if the grocery store is too busy, if the parking lot's too busy. So I could only imagine. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. But just even just not just the population density, but also the conditions. Right, like the coldest it gets here is probably 2 degrees Celsius, whereas in the Yukon, like you said, -40, negative, and that's lethal. So it's you're doing that, and are you starting to go on expeditions in the Yukon? Are you starting to lead expeditions in the Yukon? Are you guiding, or are you paying for guides? What's going on in the Yukon?
Yeah, so now I'm starting to actually, my buddy and I, we get calls from RAI, which is a company in Seattle, saying we're looking for guides on the Yukon. Can you work for us?
And they knew of you already, or you reached out to them before, or
Actually, they knew of us, or they knew of me somehow or other. And so, and so then, so with them, we're doing river trips and mountaineering on Mount Logan, the highest peak in Canada, and I have a group then it develops even further where I have a group from Switzerland that comes over every year, and he phones me up in the fall and says, I want to do a river that, really hasn't been done before or very little is known about. Can you organize that? So for a number of years, this was pretty wild. I'd spend the winter looking at the maps. I'd even sometimes take a plane and fly over a river that nobody knew very much about. And then we'd fly canoes into the very top of the river onto a lake. The group would arrive. We'd start teaching them canoe skills. We'd go down the river to down the paddle. And now we have the canoe. Now we have the lake skills, right? We come to the mouth of the river. Now we learn river skills. Then we head down the river and eventually exit if all goes well, So some wild trips,
wow. And so when was the first after you left the Yukon? You were there for how long? Sorry.
So I ran the business there for probably 30 years, but going in and out. So then I started to be asked to guide elsewhere. So at the end of the Yukon summer, I would then head south to Vancouver, and then it would be guiding in South America, or then the whole guiding in Antarctica started.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys doing, like, I'm sure along the way you're doing like some fishing trips or anything like that, or no?
Yeah, so we did. Fishing was more if we ended up on a lake that had good fish, people would fish and things like that, but it wasn't so much of a focus of that. It was more the sort of raw adventure aspect of that.
Yeah, you are definitely an adventurer, that's for sure. That's so 30 years in the Yukon, and that puts you, not to age you, but roughly like 50-ish, is that correct? Around the time where you start to go to the South Pole?
That's right, yeah. Or so because there was an overlap, so probably 20 years I started, the whole Antarctica thing started,
Whoa.
And again, that was the story there is that there's a buddy of mine, Pat Morrow, who was the second Canadian to climb Everest. And when he came back, he said, I want to climb the 7 summits. And in the mountaineering world, there's 7 continents, 7 summits. And this is a big deal in the mountaineering world. And at that point, it hadn't been done. And so Pat was attempting to be the first person to do it. And so, he and I climbed together a lot. So I was, basically I was his helper,
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the most difficult place to get to was the peak in Antarctica, because it was 2,000 miles away from the nearest town in South America, and super complicated logistics. So we ended up finding the one plane in the world which was actually used by the U.S. military in the high Arctic to look for Russian submarines, and it was an old DC-3, but with 3 turbine engines on it. And so we were able to lease it. And even though we were we were broke climbers, but we had buddies who were climbers who were wealthy. So we had access to their funds. So we put it all together. It was like $500,000. And the first year we had 2 disastrous years.
Why disastrous?
Oh, well, so now we have this plane, this very funky 3 turbine engines on a plane, and we needed one government to support us to get into Antarctica. So we went to Chile, and the military said, we will support you if you pay for fuel. We went to the Argentinians, and they said, we will give you fuel for free as long as a general goes with you on the flight, and we want to go to the South Pole. So we went for the cheap option, and so we pick up this senior in the army, senior official in the army. He gets on the plane. We fly to Antarctica. We land at a base, but then a big storm comes up, and the plane gets wrecked, or unflyable with people.
Whoa.
And so now we're stuck in Antarctica. But the plane, it could fly back to South America to be repaired.
So when you fly there, sorry to interrupt you. Are you flying? Because correct me if I'm wrong. Is Antarctica divided into different areas that different countries control? Is that right or wrong?
Yeah, what happens is that there's now an Antarctic treaty. So various countries have claimed segments of Antarctica. And so Chile has a segment. Argentina has a segment that overlaps with Chile. The UK has a segment that overlaps with Chile and Argentina. The Americans claim the whole thing. Russia claims the whole thing. So
are they claiming it, or do they have like a recognized claim, like internationally?
So what happened is when a treaty was made that says, let's put all our claims in abeyance. So everybody has a claim, but we're going to put them on hold while this treaty is in place. So right now, all claims are on hold. But the U.S. says, but we're not relinquishing our claim, and the Russians say we're not relinquishing our claim either.
Classic.
But so there's a geopolitical game going,
right,
going on for years.
I'm just thinking like diplomatically when you fly there. So Argentina gives you the permission to fly there. Do you have to fly into then Argentinian claimed?
That's right, into an Argentinian
territory.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so your plane gets wrecked, and then I'll let you keep going.
Yeah. So the plane gets wrecked. So then the plane flies back into Argentina to get fixed because it's just damaged. So long story short is that the pilot of the plane is British, and the plane, when it gets back into Argentina, is surrounded and told you need to surrender. And it turns out that the general we were working with was doing this off the side of the table. He didn't have official permission with this. He was
just
he was flying by the seat of his pants to
taking the cash basically.
Yeah, and the Air Force was the official functionary that ran everything into Antarctica. We should have been going through the Argentine Air Force. So they were highly upset at this army general, trying to one-up them. So that's why the plane was, impounded for a while. The pilot was arrested, put in jail for a while. It took a couple of weeks to get sorted out,
So the same general that he took the cash and then came with you and got stuck there, and he was incognito the whole time and didn't tell you about Air Force?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. And I gotta ask, are you privy to or keen or interested in any of the conspiracy theories that go around Antarctica?
I mean, I've looked at them, and I don't, because in fact, some of the pictures of the mountains that people say are pyramids, I know where those are, and I've walked on them, and they don't look like pyramids to me.
Yeah. Okay.
They look like it's the same rock as I'm on the next hill over, So, so they could well be, and that's not my, I've spent, a bunch of seasons in Antarctica in all sorts of places, and I haven't seen anything like that,
Yeah, that's crazy. I actually haven't done too much research on it in general. It's usually as it relates to other conspiracy theories, because I just like to go down that path. But I just had to ask. Because it just the whole funky business of the of this Argentinian general just makes me laugh. That's hilarious. But when you say, sorry, I got to backtrack. When you say the plane gets destroyed by the weather, is that just because like it's hail? Is it just like super high winds that are blowing other things into it? Is that what's going on?
So what happened is that the planes are landing on glaciers, right? And they're on skis. And so we want to tie them down. So we dig holes in the ground and put 45-gallon drums in there and a rope, up to the wings. And so everything's tied down.
Anchored down.
Anchored down, yeah. But then the winds are so in that particular case, the winds got over 100 miles an hour. They got to hurricane force. And the ropes, the ropes wore out. And the plane was actually blown down the glacier, which actually goes into the ocean. But fortunately, it didn't go very far. There was a snowcat part right next to it, and it rammed into a snowcat. And the snowcat then made a hole in the fuselage of the plane. So, so structurally the plane was okay, but there's now a hole in it, right?
That's insane.
Yes.
And so how did you get back? What was round two like
So then
after that?
eventually the plane was repaired, came back, picked us up, flew us back into, now we were persona non grata in Argentina. So we flew back into Chile, and then we called up, and the Chilean general we'd spoken to earlier said, he'd been saying, I told you, there's conflict between the Chileans and the Argentinians. There's some border issues. So the general was sort of, I told you so, you shouldn't trust those Argentinians. So then we had a second attempt, and again, we had aircraft problems, came back. So now it took us 3 years before we finally end up getting to the mountain, climbing the mountain,
Mm-hmm. And
so after that, here we were dirt bike climbers, and because we had these wealthy patrons, we ended up making $50,000 from this thing coming back through Chile. The general says, if you ever want to come back, we have fuel available. We don't normally sell it, but we're short of money, and so we'll sell you this fuel for $50,000. So we paid the money, flew back, and immediately the phone started ringing off the hook of other people who wanted to climb the mountains. So that then started this Antarctic business, So it was just started off as just a plan to climb a mountain, but then it ended up being, it then became a multi-million-dollar business over some years,
That's insane. That is insane. That is a testament to you build it and they will come, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And again, the other thing is, having got to the top of this mountain we planned to climb, we were standing on the top looking around going, oh, wow, the South Pole is 700 miles, 1,200 kilometers in that direction. And nobody's ever been there from here. How about that? So that was the sort of, oh, well, we could do that. So then it was, so that was the next iteration,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And along the way, you have these people around you, and are they all gung-ho as well? Or are any of these people expressing like kind of what we talked about earlier, where they're like kind of like, hey, we should kind of pump the brakes, this might be a bit too ambitious? Or is it just unanimous around the whole room? We have to keep going, we have to expand, we have to keep going higher and bigger, more remote. Is that kind of what's happening?
Yeah, I think rather than have to, I think it's more, what is possible? That is possible. You think that's possible? Well, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's figure out if it is possible,
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole thing. Look, the South Pole is 1,200 kilometers away over there, hasn't been done before. How do we do it? What's possible? Because, of my experience in the Canadian North, I was immediately figuring out, oh, wow, we could build sleds like this, copying the Inuit sleds, right? We could use this equipment we've used in the North. That would work down here. Immediately my brain starts to go to, oh, yeah, there's all this stuff I know that would work, so the pieces start to fall into place,
Now, here's a random question. When you're at the South Pole, and maybe we'll connect the dots, I guess. Was there any complications between going from, okay, we climbed this peak in Antarctica, the South Pole's over here. Do you go back to the Chileans? Are you going back to the Argentinians? Like, how do you start getting to the South Pole?
So fortunately at that point in time, the Chileans, they looked upon this as they were looking upon the geopolitics and saying, if we support this Canadian group to establish these camps deep in Antarctica, it strengthens our claim to our little wedge. It's like a pizza wedge they were claiming, right?
You're helping colonize. This is amazing.
That's right, yes.
That's amazing.
And so we have these Canadians who want to colonize this little area.
Yeah.
And so, but, we'll have a Canadian, we'll have a Chilean guy go with them, we'll keep we'll keep our finger on exactly what they're doing. We'll monitor what they're doing. We'll work together. And so we have the support of the highest level of the Chilean government,
Another random question, before I get into my other random question. Why, and this might be a dumb question, why not go through the Canadian or American government? Are they not interested? Are they not, they're just, we'd rather fight wars in other countries? Is that what's going on with their budgets? Like, how come, why South American countries?
Yeah, good question. So the Americans, they have a big infrastructure, and they saw us as a possible, they saw us, what are these people going to do for us? Because we have a huge infrastructure already.
That we can't.
They could actually cost us money because we might have to rescue them.
Right.
So the Americans, when we approached the Americans, they said, get the hell away from us. We want to have nothing to do with you. Don't think. So even on so now we developed, we'd sold seats to fly to the South Pole, and commercially, and so people were paying us. We'd work out all logistics using Canadian aircraft, Canadian logistics to fly to the South Pole. On our first flight, we call up the South Pole base and say, "Hey, we're flying in the South Pole. Can we have permission to land?" And the South Pole base is American. And they said, "Permission is denied. You're not allowed entry here."
Wow.
And so, but our pilot said, "Okay, I'll just find the flattest piece of snow I can find," which happened to be their runway route.
Wow.
Which was a snow runway. So there's the level of hostility literally towards us. But meanwhile, the Chileans, they were at the international level. The U.S. was applying pressure to the Chileans not to support us. Literally, it's so funny that this small little Canadian group was causing that much angst for the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million and one jokes I want to make about small little groups that make the U.S. do things all the time, but anyways, that is such an interesting. I also thought it would be due to proximity as well, because I think there's islands that are owned by Argentina that are pretty close to Antarctica.
That's right. Yeah, both Chile and Argentina at their southern tip have islands that extend towards Antarctica, and there had actually been, I think in the 1950s, there'd been a couple of little naval battles over these islands.
I remember hearing.
And that was one of the reasons the treaty was brought in, was to stop literally the fighting,
Yeah, because there's, I think even the shortest distance between, like land distance between them, is an island isn't it Argentinian territory, or is it another?
That's right. Yes, from southern South America to Antarctica, it's one of the Argentinian islands.
Uh-huh. Okay, so here was my random question I thought about earlier. When you get to the South Pole and you're climbing mountains, you're doing expeditions out there, is there anything that's like different, where your equipment misbehaves, or you feel different because of it's the South Pole? It is the most negative, like magnetic polar place, if that makes sense. Is that a dumb question, or?
No, it's a good question. And so at the South Pole, because there's an American base there, so there's actually a physical base. Mm-hmm. Now at the North Pole, though, North Pole is on ocean, which is, so I've also done a trip to the North Pole, and that's on ice, right? Mm-hmm. And when we got there, the ice is moving. So when we got there, it just looks like the next piece of ice, right? You look around, oh, here we are. The GPS says we're 99.999 there. It never doesn't say, it's for 89.9. It never gives 90. But then after we're there half an hour now, we've drifted off the pole.
Right. That's at the north.
To get back to the pole, we have to turn around and start walking back. So the ice of the pole is moving.
That's at the North Pole, sorry?
At the North Pole, yeah.
So it's basically literally just floating sheets of ice. So naturally it moves off of the magnetic North Pole.
That's right. There's a current. But then the magnetic pole is actually a little bit away, and the compass, at the North Pole, the magnetic compass is useless, actually. So
yeah, because it would just be either spinning or not moving.
It's literally spinning in circles. in some, depending where you are.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had visioned in my head. But so when you're at the South Pole, do you have other phenomenon like that? Is there anything else that happens, like maybe, or?
So as you're traveling towards the pole, the sun is now just going round and round exactly the same place all the time. But, so further away, the sun is moving, you have the dip, the rise and fall of the sun on 24-hour basis, but at the South Pole, it's going round and round. And then,
so it's always bright.
I'm sorry?
So it's always bright during
it's always
time
bright,
of the year.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. And then getting lower and lower until it dips below the horizon for 6 months, right?
Right. And then
then you have a twilight for another month, either side before it gets total darkness.
And have you been there for all of those times?
I've typically been there from so midsummer, so November till February.
And
the temperatures, I think the South Pole average temperature is like -40, right? And so even in the summer, it can be, it's typically -40. And so as we want to get out of there. So in one journey we did from the South Pole out of the coast, out, across the continent, and we knew we were battling against winter, so every day there was emergency in every step because, the temperatures are getting lower and lower every day,
And so, sorry, does your equipment, like GPS or any of your other positioning equipment or anything else, is it behaving differently because you're at the South Pole? Or does it just kind of behave normally, or?
Now it behaves normally. Again, earlier when we first started going, it wouldn't work, so GPS wouldn't work. And we, again, one of the trips going from the South Pole out, GPS had just come out. We were very happy with it. We were, totally enthusiastic. And it was a big box. The first GPSs were like a shoebox,
Uh-huh.
And so it had this shoebox, and the dial, was super good. And we tested it out everywhere as we left Vancouver, Los Angeles, in Chile and southern Chile and Antarctica, all the way, get to the South Pole. It's working. We start on this journey. We're 10 days into this journey, heading towards a mountain that's about 180 miles away and across a featureless plateau, and the thing packs in and stops working. So now that's our only, that was our plan A, was that as navigation. So now we're down to using the magnetic compass, which can be widely distorted, and the sun to navigate. And so fortunately everything worked, but as we trucked along, or as I trucked along, I'd be working out if we make an error in our calculations, what happens? We end up going in circles.
Yeah, that's insane. It's not as easy as just looking up at the peak and going in that direction, eh? It's just,
yeah.
wow. And so how long were you doing the South Pole expeditions and the Antarctic expeditions before you thought, let's do this trip from the north to the south?
So that was about 10 years of doing the Antarctic stuff. And then the whole idea of this journey from North Pole to South Pole, occurred to me.
And you said that was right at the turn of the century?
Yeah, so it was right, so we're talking, 1997, and the millennium was 2000, right? So, and literally, this may sound bizarre, but it was inspired by a dream, and the dream was this classic dream of I'm on a train, it's being attacked by soldiers, I go into fear, but all of a sudden, the fear drops, and I stop the train, and lo and behold, heroically, I explain to the soldiers they don't have to be controlled this way. They, and everybody, and like peace, right? Sort of, very wild peace dream, right? But next morning, all of a sudden, this idea comes about the millennium, another we've been 2,000 years, there's another 1,000 years. It's a big turning it's a big event, right? And so how can we create more peace on the planet going forward? And I realized this journey, if I chose young people for this journey, we did this journey. We spoke to other young people about the power we have to make a difference along the way, that we could end up at the South Pole with millions of promises of action from young people around the world. So very esoteric, big picture dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I started actioning it and had some initial success, and then had massive failure after massive failure after massive failure. And, I flew all over North America and Europe looking for funds, and spoke with Ford and General Motors and you name every company. And then eventually, General Motors looked like they were going to give us, this is when they were coming out with e-vehicles, that they decided, no, we're not going to fund you. So the project looked dead. And I was in a men's group at that point in time, went to my men's group, and they'd been following along, and I said, the project's dead. And I said, well, how do you feel? I said, well, I feel really shitty, And so they said, well, just feel shitty for us, Okay, so I felt shitty with them. And then after 5 minutes of feeling shitty, I said, actually, I feel good. I just feel like I've poured my heart into it. I did my best. I'm good. Next morning, the phone rings, and it's a company from Korea saying, we would like to sponsor your project. Totally out of the blue, out of the left field.
How did they even get wind of it?
Because I've been looking for Canadians to participate in this, and so it had articles in the Globe and Mail and various other places, and somebody had read about it, and so yeah.
You sound like the most resourceful person I've ever spoken to in my life. I've got to tell you that.
Well, no, I think lucky. It's
just to do all of these things. It sounds like, oh yeah, that's the most obvious thing to do, but it's not all the time. Most people would hit that roadblock alone. Where do I find applicants? That's enough to stop most people. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
Where it just kind of seems like you're like, okay, what's the next? Okay, what's the next? It's like life just continuously throws you hoops, and you're like, all right, whatever. I want to do my thing.
That's right. And I really see that if I step back now and look at it, I really see that the whole idea of life as an exploration is almost, it's almost like that's part of my DNA, So again, for listeners, how can you use what you're learning here to sort of approach things as an exploration, and so even if you go for a walk, just explore the neighborhood, sort of, check out, go different routes, just experiment, and have fun with it, just enjoy the exploration of life,
Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't agree more. I 100% agree with that. Like, there is so much to explore, especially living in Vancouver here. Like, going on runs, going on hikes, doing those types of things on the weekend, just trying to go out. My fiance is big into it, so she's been getting me into. She forces me to touch trees and stuff when we go out. She's very fantastic that way. But it is. I want to get back to that the expedition of this man-powered, not just going from North to South Pole, the man-powered. How does that become the modality?
So, I wanted to do it under human power. So, we start off with the North Pole or North Magnetic Pole. We skied out into Canada. Then we got on bikes, and we biked down through Canada, through the USA, Central America. Then we had to sail around Colombia because, Colombia, we were told that this group of young people would be ideal hostages. They'd be, there's a lot of hostaging.
For human trafficking.
Human trafficking, yeah, for dollars, right?
Yeah.
They'd be valuable.
Yeah.
So we sailed around Colombia, then got on bicycles, and we hiked sections, we kayaked and canoed sections too, Got down to South America, then actually we flew into Antarctica and then skied to the South Pole,
Holy, that's crazy. And So when you like, I'm assuming because these are all of the things. One of the questions I was thinking before, because you were talking about mindset and kind of the human body, the human brain, and the potential that we have. It's very obvious how you became interested in that, just kind of being along the way. Because, dude, I live a pretty, I would say, average life when compared to what you're speaking about in regards to. I do home renovations. I'm a carpenter. I love exercising. I work out at least once a day, so I'm pretty fit. I'm doing I started doing martial arts a couple years ago, so I've been getting into that. And I have people telling me, you're doing a little bit too much. Maybe I have like an injury. I've got to get a shoulder surgery this year because I keep dislocating one of my shoulders. But I have people tell me you're doing too much. You're kind of pushing your body too much, or and I've always kind of been like, I don't know, my body's like kind of like acclimated to it. Is that the right word? Climatized
Mm.
to it. Where like I guess what I'm trying to say is it's very obvious where you've kind of gotten this obsession with mindset and the human body. At what point did you start to label it as like I'm so interested in this? Because I'm sure along the way people were telling you like, you have you thought about slowing down? You know?
Hmm. Yes. And I think there was some experiences. So I was looking at, you know, I obviously started looking at physical potential, right? So, on all these expeditions we would train, so I got into the aspects of physical and then also started looking at psychological, then guiding, I ended up guiding, people who were millionaires and billionaires. And there, well, it was like a shock for me because I had this idea that people who were that successful would have, would have their shit together, basically. And but what I discovered was that some of these people who were highly successful were driven in ways that were not healthy. And so, for instance, and it, so in it, to boil it down to a story, it would be in early childhood, they said, I'm going to get the hell out of this poverty, going to do everything I can. So one of the people always wore a white shirt, for instance, a clean white shirt every day, things like that, right? They then became highly successful. They're still making more money now in their 50s and 60s, and their health is not very good. Their relationships are not very good. They're not very happy, but they're driven. So they found a winning formula in childhood that they're still running the show, right? And so that's when I started to, well, what is fulfillment and what is, you know, in terms of ultimate human potential, what is that? And so that's when, going off to India, et cetera, really, I took a deep dive into that. And so as I listen to you, I really hear that, your exploration, even the fact of what you said earlier about just, I realize I've shifted my mindset to realize, oh, wow, I am doing what I love and I can create more love in the doing, right? So in the moment by moment. And so if I was to summarize all this into what is one of my life lessons is as I'm skiing to the South Pole, or anybody skiing to the South Pole, I have hours and hours with just me and my thoughts, right? And I realize my thoughts can go into complaint, but when I do that, well, what the hell am I doing here? I wish I was back in Vancouver. My performance, as my speed over snow, I can track, right? So my speed over snow, as soon as I complain, drops by 20%, right? If I go into daydream, as in, oh, I wish I was it's not as bad as complaint, but I wish I was on the beach in Hawaii. I remember surfing or whatever, or a coffee shop in Vancouver, my performance drops by 10%. When I'm just with the snow, which is all there is, in front of me, is but glorious snow with all its little crinkles and fragments. I'm doing super well. And then there'll be moments when creativity comes in as, well, oh, I could modify this, I could do that. all of a sudden there's a spring in my step.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that really encapsulates life. So, because there's nothing else, right? Really, it's
Mm-hmm.
we each have an inner world that is our world. And so every time, so you, Mark, when you're, you know, with your hammer and your screw and your measuring tape, and you're totally present with it, life is beautiful, right? Life is just rich and vibrant, and that is right.
Mm-hmm.
And also I see this, so say for instance, on the way to the South Pole, I get injured and now I can't reach the South Pole. If I've fully enjoyed the moment, it's like, oh, well, that's shit out of luck. Let me watch next, right?
Right.
If I've been striving, thinking all the time, when am I going to get there? When am I going to get what it's going to be like when I get there? Now I enter the realm of disappointment. So with any activity, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, Olympic athlete or the next nail, if I'm focused on the result, I can get disappointment. If I'm focused on the journey, I can be fulfilled when it doesn't succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it comes down to a lot for you, in other words, is being present, being intentional with your behaviors, with your actions, what you're doing. And that is so relevant because we literally live in a day and age where I call them attention assassins, where we have like this consistent, we're barraged. And you're lucky, you're blessed. Well, I would say disciplined and smart that you're not on Instagram or other social media, because it is full of like literal attention assassins. They are the scientists that study the art of hijacking your dopamine systems, hijacking your attention span, completely slaughtering it, and literally just showing you a million shiny objects. Like it is the distraction emporium. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yes. Yes.
it's so easy, even when you're at work. Like myself, I do, like, it's a small family home renovation company. And so there's so many times where I can get to work, I get the keys to the house, and I can put my headphones on and listen to podcasts or listen to audiobooks or literally be anywhere mentally else than what I'm doing, especially because, you do a job long enough, a lot of the skills become autopilot. Whether you're building a wall, painting a wall, drywalling it, there's a lot of things that you do that are repetitive, and, it's like folding your laundry or doing your dishes. You could do it while arguing with somebody. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes. That's right.
and so it's very easy to be distracted. It's very easy to just be on autopilot. And, like, do you have, I know that you're not on social media. Do you have a version of that for yourself? Do you have struggles with distraction? Or have you had to deal with those hurdles before?
Yeah. No, I know totally what you're talking about, and I, uh, um, I do limit, the watch time, because, you know, YouTube videos can suck me right in, one after the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, and I see that it it's time, it's a time, as you say, it's a time suck, right? That is not healthy. And so in my coaching, as I coach people too, I hear this all the time in my coaching from people. And so I see that, you know, again, knowing your interest in mental health and things like this, I really see that, because in my coaching, I see that the way we set up the morning and the way we go to bed or the late evening has massive effect on how fulfilled we feel in life. And so, you mentioned earlier, if when you exercise first thing in the morning, you feel way better. And so, from my perspective, things that we do in the morning really set us up well, right? And then how we go to bed too, if especially, the news type stuff at bedtime is going to affect dreams, which then affects how we sleep and also how we wake up. So,
Well, I gotta say, probably most people aren't even reading the news before bed. We're talking like people are just watching TV shows, reality shows. It could be movies. It could be, and nowadays, you're talking about fight scenes, arguments. So people are literally like going from the most heightened human experiences instantly into sleep. Because let's face it, like people are watching, like, yeah, people argue, people fight, people do all these things. And like moments before their brain just says, "Okay, enough's enough. I'm going to pass out." Like that's kind of, we use these things to sedate us, right? Like it really is what it is.
yeah, yeah.
And so people are sedating themselves with like essentially the most heightened, because nobody's really watching like cat videos before bed. It's always like watching like a Marvel movie. You're watching like the fate of the world resting upon someone's shoulder as they, it's the most heightened version of human interaction. And then you're asleep, which would
Yes,
never happen in the real world.
yes, yeah.
And
And
then we're like, why can't I sleep? I wake up stressed, or I wake up anxious, or I wake up,
mhm, yeah, I agree. And also another thing from on those lines is that we often have fixed perspectives on things too, and so that's where the whole idea of this explore thing I mentioned earlier comes in too. That often, um, people say, "Well, this always upsets me," or "this situation upsets me always." But from the perspective of a coach, that's, "Oh, wow, this is this is a it's an ideal thing to look at," because if we're using the word always, we haven't looked at it from another angle, right? So those are the moments to say, "Oh, let me look at this through a different lens," let me
Yeah.
shift perspective.
Oh yeah, 100%. That actually literally it reminds me of something I forgot to mention earlier in regards to my own career. Because when I had first, like I said, when I was a teenager, I had just done odd jobs for my dad's company. He's always run this company. And so I found myself feeling like limited. I felt like I was like, if I continue being a carpenter working in construction, I'm going to make an hourly rate the rest of my life. There's really no way to kind of get better at this. I'm just going to be digging holes. Because when you first start, you're digging holes, you're going in the attics, you're going in the crawl spaces, you're doing pretty much all the things. They used to call me a gopher. It was like you'd send the gopher to go and do this, right? And so you just send the gopher to go and do it. So I was like, dude, I don't want to be doing this the rest of my life, making X amount per hour and just try. If
Mhm.
I want to make more, I just have to give more time. And I get that that's kind of a principle for every industry, but it felt like a pair of, what they call golden handcuffs. Like it was
Mhm.
like, and so I had left because I was stuck in that perspective that there would always be someone above me and I was always going to be stuck in some sort of what felt like a pyramid scheme. And why is someone else making money off my labor? This doesn't make sense to me. It pissed me off. And it wasn't until I understood a little bit more, going and working in different industries, working in restaurants, working in sales, working in the fitness industry, that I started to understand, okay, this is kind of how business works. And I coming back to construction, I was like, oh, this is actually a scalable industry. Like this is way more scalable than I thought. It doesn't have to be bound to an hourly rate and somebody holding my hand and giving me work along the way. There's an opportunity for me to expand, take risks, make more. And ultimately, what I find, I think a lot of, I don't know if it's men in particular, but we all kind of have this kind of call where we like to be a leader of some sort, a teacher of some sort,
Yeah.
an instructor to take all the things that people have helped us along the way and then pass that on to someone else. And in construction, I always feel like that is a huge window that people leave closed, is like to nurture that part of us that wants to be a leader, to show the next
Mhm.
generation of young boys that they're sitting in school. This is the thing I really wanted to drive home, that really helps me, um feel, like you said, fulfilled, is
Mhm.
I kind of want to show the kids that the guys that felt like me, and probably you at sometimes in your life, where you're like, I'm not good at this whole reading thing and this whole like writing down the right answer. I'm
Yeah.
so bad at it. It's not,
Yeah.
I didn't even finish a book till I was 26 because I just thought I can't do it. I'm not that
Mhm.
person.
Mhm.
And but there was always like that type of thing where if I was building something, if I was just kind of working together as a team with somebody on a
Mhm.
crew there with camaraderie, it was those are the times where I look at my watch and I'm like, wow, 4 hours went by. That felt like 10 minutes. Like I was having so much fun. And so for me, it just kind of that when you say perspective shift, that's exactly what I think of, because there is a such a big opportunity for people to, show these types of people where they think I'm so limited because I'm not good at X, Y, and Z, because I don't fit in this mold, because I don't do this thing. And it's actually like, no, those are usually the industry leaders in
Mhm.
any area of life. The types of people that don't fit the mold. So they had to kind of carve their own way. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that?
Yeah, from what you say, I boil it down to now I don't need to go on a big expedition. I can walk out my door and do something simple and be totally fulfilled, right?
And
But
give someone else hope. That's the other thing as well, right?
yes, that's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree totally. And I think, you know, that's in some ways, you know, knowing what brings you fulfillment and then optimizing that, right? Or if you're feeling unfulfilled, how do I shift this into fulfillment?
Hmm.
How do I shift the situation into fulfillment?
And so when did you start doing this whole coaching thing, working with entrepreneurs, or I guess pretty much anyone who's looking to get some help with this? It excuse me, it has become definitely a crisis because, well, I wouldn't say crisis, but I guess maybe more on the forefront of people's attention. Because if I were to ask my dad, or a lot of people that are, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years older than me, a lot of the time, if you ask them, hey, your career, does it give you fulfillment? They go, well, I paid for my family to live a life, and, my kids are doing all right. My wife's happy. I- If I would ask my grandfather, he was born in 1913. Grandpa, what was fulfilling for your life? He's like, well, Copenhagen got invaded in the war, and then I left. I came to Canada, and we're safe. So that's good. Like the question of do I feel fulfilled in my day-to-day life, I feel like has really only become a question or something that's on people's minds in the last 10, 15 years. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And I the way I look at it is that as we evolve, so also your grandparents would have just said grin and bear it, right? If
Yeah.
things are tough, grin and bear it. And there's on the one hand that that has some great qualities to it, the ability to grin and bear it, grit, all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, we also want to have emotional intelligence, emotional resilience. And so being in touch with one's emotions has opened up a whole it's opened a whole bag of on the one hand worms, but it's also resulted in people feeling more fulfilled, right? More authentic. Yeah, because typically the grin and bear it led to suppression of thoughts, a suppression of emotions, right? And so it led to a whole pile of things that are, basically unhealthy, right?
Mhm.
And so now, as we in the process of our evolution, we're now saying, oh, feeling an emotion, expressing an emotion is valuable rather than sitting inside your stomach and giving you stomach cancer, right? Or stomach ulcers, to express anxiety. And now we can work with that. And so as more of these emotions are being expressed, then we can also look at through the lens fulfillment then also becomes, well, you know, um, what am I going for? And then we can start realizing, no, actually, I can get fulfillment in a lot of small things. So I'll give you, maybe this will help or this is my picture on it. I was chatting with somebody recently who was coaching, and they were saying they're older person. They were saying, my life has been massive suffering and struggle with this death and that thing and the business failing and blah blah. They listed all this plethora of events, right? And say my life, and so my life is a struggle now. So I was saying, okay, well, in this moment, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your happiness? And the person said, well, I'm a 7, but 2 years ago I was a -2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, and so next, I said, well, next time, between now and the next time we meet, just check in a few times on how happy you are, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. So next meeting, she said, well, I was volunteering at a gardening project with some and I had so much fun. It was a 10. I went out for lunch with a friend. It was a 10. And she started to realize that all these moments were actually high quality, that she was broad brushing. It was, I've been suffering for years. So then my question was, well, in this moment, how are you? And she said, well, I'm a 7. I said, what would it take to do it to move it up to a 9? I said, well, actually, no, I can be a 9 in this moment. Oh, okay, great. So I guess what I'm saying here is that we have these mental constructs that keep us locked in about the past, even about the present, that if we start to explore, reveal bigger pictures,
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back to your point about, I think hopefully are you following along with me?
Yeah, 100%. That reminds me, the example I've been stuck on recently that resonates with me is again, I sit in that Vancouver traffic. I head home around 5 o'clock sometimes, and heading south into any of the suburbs around Vancouver, you're bound to just basically be stuck in bumper to bumper traffic.
Yeah.
And for so long, I'm sure a lot of people relate to this, but traffic, be driving and having a lot of people around me while I'm driving, it has always frustrated me, always stressed me out, made me annoyed. And I remember vividly driving home one day and just kind of thinking in my head, this stresses me out all the time, but like, it's really unavoidable. And with the career I've chosen and where I choose to live, like I'd rather live in a suburb. So when you factor in all those things, you're kind of like, this is going to be something that's present in my life 5 out of 7, 6 out of 7 days of the week until I, decide I don't want to do this anymore. And so are you going to choose? I remember asking myself, are you going to choose to be stressed every day? Or are you going to choose to be happy every day? Because this traffic's not good. Like, that's not one of the options. It's not, do you want to sit in traffic or not? It's, how do you want to feel when you're doing this? Like, you kind of have to decide how this is going to go down. Because A, you're going to be, there's a ton of traffic in Vancouver, and B, there's a ton of rain in Vancouver. So you're going to be sitting in the truck, in the rain, in traffic for probably a long time. And what do you want to do with that? Do you want to be happy about it, or do you want to be stressed about it? You want to swear at the guy over your wheel every single time you get cut off, or do you want to just laugh and be like, typical? Like, that's kind of the way I go about it now,
I mean, you've nailed something that in my coaching I've come across hundreds of times, and I'd look now, having heard this hundreds of times, I really see that there's a pattern of 2 hours multiplied by, or say 30 minutes, even once a week. But if we do it, that's 52, that's 52 hours times 20 years. It's a massive amount of time that is unconscious, which will age us. It produces, we all know, the chemicals it produces in the body, etc., etc. That just one insight, one questioning, as soon as you questioned it, you shifted, didn't you? You shifted that, that whole thing in just one question of just what can I do in this situation, right?
Yeah, and just making the conscious decision. it sounds very cliche for people that, I've heard it a million times and I didn't start to understand it until this year, where you really just do, like, there comes a point where you decide, like, am I going to be someone that's just stressed? Or do I want to choose happiness? Because every day there's going to be a million excuses to stress, to treat people wrong, to raise your voice, to have those kind of like red lights and the sirens going on internally, like red alert, like there's a million excuses. You see people freak out over like spilling a coffee. That's another thing I used to use as an example of like, I'd spill a coffee. I'd be like, oh man, I'd be cursing, I'd be swearing. It is something that was what yeah, it would just drive me nuts. Any mistakes that I made a lot of the time, those type of things would really set me off and make me upset. And just asking that question on a regular basis, like, do I want to be happy today? Do I want to choose to be happy today? It sounds like victim blaming. It sounds like that's the way I felt at the time. But then you start to realize, like, I kind of am in the driver's seat, not even like just like literally when I'm sitting in traffic, but metaphorically in life. Like I kind of get to choose this. And it took me a while to realize that. Maybe I'm a little bit slower learner than other people, but I think it just definitely interesting. When you go to work, you have different jobs and you see people that, how you doing today? And they're just again and again, there's always something going on. My landlord did this, my roommate did this, my boss did this, everyone's out to get me. Why is my life like this? And you're like, you might be part of the problem.
That's right, exactly.
Maybe. Don't shoot the messenger. So when did you start to pivot to coaching people? When did you feel like that would help you? Because okay, here's something that that's kind of been on my mind, and maybe this is just kind of because I'm stuck in my own lens. I got obsessed with self-development and mental health because I struggled with my self-development and my mental health. I think there was kind of environmental and natural, like kind of influences in my life that put me in a position where I struggled a lot with my mental health, with addiction, with just kind of being able to interface with the world, basically, is the best way I could put it. And that's what made me obsessed with starting to read books that were self-help, really dive into mental health and, reading books like Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, like these types of things.
Great. That's a great book, yeah?
Yeah, it is. But these, I guess what I'm trying to say is I became obsessed with something that I felt like I lacked. And from what you've described, you're consistently going adventuring, trying new careers, going to new places. It doesn't sound like, to me, you felt a lack of fulfillment. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What made you so interested in this idea of fulfillment and then passing it on to others and becoming, a coach of that? I'm not sure how you describe it, but what started that obsession? Because it doesn't sound like you lacked it. Is that right or wrong? Or
yeah, no, you're right. I think it really was curiosity about what is possible. So as I having done these various expeditions, it's like, well, what's next? And
so was that a lack of fulfillment? Was it kind of almost like there was never a peak that satisfied the need, that scratched the itch?
I guess you could look at it that way. Yeah, that's the yeah. So I guess it's curiosity is so I guess what I hear you saying is, what's the origin of what is possible? Where does that question arise from? Right?
Yeah, like where does your obsession with or I don't know how to say it, but what made you pivot to the consistently thinking about fulfillment and pivoting to wanting to help others feel that fulfillment?
So because okay, so go back now then to teaching in the Yukon, right? And um, I really got a lot of fulfillment of teaching, um, and then moving into guiding. Again, I was working with people, and so so even on these expeditions, there's an element of, you know, how do we how do we function as a team? How does each team member return home feeling fulfilled? Um, and then with that pole to pole project, that was also so the theme there is about um, how do we inspire, or how do I inspire other people to be the best they can be in the world.
Hmm.
So so really that's, that came through in the teaching, and that's, if you look at a thread, that's, that's a thread that's been driving,
Hmm. But
so.
what were the mechanics where you decided like, okay, I'm going to, because obviously you're still doing your hikes, but you're not doing your expeditions to the South Pole any longer. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And so how did you transition from doing that to starting to just to help other people out?
Well, actually, so from the coaching, I started getting calls asking, would I coach people? So some of these millionaires and billionaires I'd worked out, they called me and said, "Hey, could you come and give a talk to my company? Can you?" And so so it's people coming to me first,
Wow.
and then I realized, oh wow, I enjoy this. This is valuable. Let me keep on pursuing this.
Hmm. And what scratches your itch more, helping other people kind of feel that fulfillment, or do you look back and want to continue to do more adventuring? Do you think you've adventured enough? I
Um, so from in the adventure world, there's always stuff to do, and um, but I now get fulfilled. I can walk out my door, and I could walk down a street in Vancouver and feel pretty fulfilled. Just being out even anywhere, I feel pretty good at. And for sure, if it's a bit more technical, a bit more scrambly, or you know, there's a whitewater involved in a canoe or a kayak. So there's an adrenaline aspect to it, but
Mhm.
but the whole piece about, you know, I get a lot of fulfillment from you know from the coaching. Just it's yeah, it's very fulfilling.
Were there any challenges that you didn't see coming when it came to the coaching and working with other people? Is there maybe a generational thing that's different with like the younger crowd? That's because it's so different when you deal with in the construction world. If you're dealing with most of the guys that I work with are 10 years my elder, 15 years my elder, and then when I go and work, I'm 30. So if I hire like a 20-year-old kid, it's almost like they're foreign. Like the culture is so different, the way they think is different. Do you feel like that? Is there anything that you didn't expect when you started working with people more in a
Well,
coaching setting?
yeah, I guess um the openness of every generation is more open to expression. Typically, that's what I would be saying, is that they're, I'm blown away at times by how young people I'm speaking with, you know, some of them, who even have families, and they're talking about how they're relating to their family, how they're bringing up their child. It's just, I'm like, holy smoke, this is different parenting, this is beautiful. This is, how they're, yeah,
Mhm.
that's, I see a lot of evolution in healthy evolution, in from generation to generation,
Hmm. So you like through through this, you've seen that people are becoming a lot more in touch with their emotions, being able to express their emotions more, and perhaps people are more sympathetic to other people's emotions. And there has been obviously talk about, I don't know if you've read the book, The Coddling of the American Mind or anything. Have you,
Oh, I haven't read it.
Jonathan?
It's about.
Yeah, Jonathan Haidt, I think. He also has another book called The Anxious Generation. I think, or Generation Anxious or something like that. But there's the argument to be made that a lot of the things that, when we are and I don't even know where I sit on this. I'm just trying to pick your brain. Do you think that in some ways we've gone too far, that we put too much emphasis or weight on these things? Do you think that perhaps there was something behind this grin and bear it type of attitude that maybe our grandparents or grandparents had literally had to form to survive? Do you think that there is credence in that, or do you think that we are 100% going in a better direction? What are your thoughts on that?
Overall, I'd say for sure we're going in a better direction. And the, you know, if you turn grin and bear it, which is our good, again, because of chatting with people on podcasts, I'm realizing that often, you know, in these explorer situations, there's an explorer mentality, which is that we very quickly go from, oh, this is a problem, to, oh, well, let's, just like, I think you do this on building sites at times. When something goes wrong, you turn it into a joke, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's almost this is the classic explorer mentality too, of turning something into a joke. And I think there's more room for that, but I look at that as being more emotional intelligence, which we can do. So I see there's a science around emotional intelligence, right? So it's not just, just shut the fuck up and grin and bear it. It's actually, no, let us develop emotional intelligence. Let us know what the triggers are, explore the triggers, and then we move beyond them.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is my summary here. If I was to, even as I mentioned earlier about the billionaires, right? So what I see is that many of us have developed a pattern from early childhood to survive, right? And so the billionaire who's now making more money, they make that money to survive. So there's a survival driving that whole pattern, and it's all unconscious, right? And all their behaviors about how they interact with people, etc. It's programmed from early childhood to survive. It's all unconscious. If we go back and sort that out, we still have the ability to be sharp in business, but now it's not coming from survival. It's just coming from pure creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that is then the root of emotional intelligence, is, that billionaire who's been angry with everybody when they don't do the deal quite exactly how he wants them done, now all of a sudden is able to laugh when people fail, right? And is able to coach them effectively. Now they've developed emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that yes, more emotions are emerging, and we're learning how to deal with them more effectively and heal them so that we end up more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree. I think with anything, these things can go too far. Like the safe spaces in college campuses, these banned speech or anything like that. It definitely does. Where when words become violence, I think that's where we get a little too far in my perspective. But I do like the idea that, because that's the one thing that kind of made me start to feel better when I started listening to these podcasts and reading these types of books, and listening to speakers like that. I started to think. I remember the first time I listened to, it's like a Jordan Peterson lecture, and he's talking about something, and he put something into words that I had felt and never been able to express. And I heard him say it. I can't even remember what it was, but I remember thinking in my head when I heard it, I've felt that before and I've never been able to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And having that experience was like, it's like it's like naming the enemy. Okay, now I can Google the enemy. Now I can find out more about this enemy. Now I can find out what their weaknesses are. I like to, like you, when you said gamify it, I grew up as a nerdy kid, grew up playing video games. So I gamify almost everything in my life. That's, the way I do it is like always like, okay, I got my main quests and my side quests, and I got, that's exactly the way I look at it. I grew up playing these types of games, and that's the same way I look at, building any skills, building my physique, building my abilities is like, in certain games, if you do this act, then your character gains this skill or this ability. And so I would always think about it that way. If I read for 20 minutes a day, I develop a bit more patience. I develop the ability to sit still. I develop the ability to be quiet. And it put that kind of development into perspective for me. And so that was kind of a useful thing for me to, like you said, gamify it. And
coming back to young people, and just tied in with what you're saying too, is that I really do see that many of these young people I'm talking with are just you know the understanding of the human brain, the understanding of the chemicals that are produced, the understanding of things like emotional intelligence, emotional resilience. This is now in their language, right? And triggers, all these things are now everyday language that is so helpful. Knowledge about for instance, even the whole thing around gym. Our grandparents hardly knew about gyms, right? Because they worked out all the time, etc. But now young people know that hey, I need to move my body. It's so there's so much more awareness around all these issues, and how they affect thoughts, how they affect emotions, how they affect performance in life.
yeah,
It's really wild how how much knowledge young people have about these things and how much they're actually implementing as well.
yeah. And just even in regards to the gym or fitness in specific, because I don't go, I go to a martial arts gym. I don't go to like a weightlifting gym anymore. I just bought equipment at home. But excuse me, I always find that I lift weights now. Of course, when I started, it was more about I just want to be jacked. I want the beach muscles. I want to impress girls. And then I slowly along the way realized like, oh, this whole exercise thing, the weightlifting, this is kind of my insurance policy. If I do this intentionally, it's not just like, oh, of course I dug holes at work today, or I had to carry a bunch of lumber up the side of a house, or there's definitely physical exertion at work. And a lot of guys that work blue collar jobs would do a lot more work than I do. Like I take it easy a lot, And so there's this idea that farming, all of these things, construction, any blue collar job or any physically demanding job, movers, anything like that, like it became relevant to me or apparent to me that I was thinking these are actually a lot of actions that can wear and tear your body down. And so like I kind of have to set up an insurance policy so that my body's strong in compromised positions and stretch out, stretch my back, stretch my knees, stretch my, get myself a little bit more limber. So my workouts started shifting from just I'm going to go lift weights for 2 hours and try and get the bigger chest to how do I get more shoulder stability? How do I get more knee stability? How do I get better at picking things up off the ground? Because in construction, that's probably 20% of your job. It's just picking things up off the ground, putting them down in other areas. So that's it became something more aware of the same way I have to read to get smarter. I have to do something to make my body more formidable as well. And so that was kind of something that I had to be more aware of. And just, again, it comes down to intentionality. Like, I'm not just doing this thing to tick the box anymore. I'm intentionally setting aside 45 minutes so that when I wake up in the morning for work tomorrow, I'm not thinking, oh, my legs are sore, my back hurts, my neck hurts. I have to do this again for another day. I want to wake up being like I felt when I was 19 years old and full of testosterone, full of energy. I want to wait like as close as I could get to that feeling, you know? That's where I want to stay.
Great.
And
And this, even what you explained there, is so different to the mindset of people in the 60s and 70s who work in the same thing. They were not thinking at age 30 about the things you're thinking of, right?
yeah, well, and this might even just be my ego, but I put it into the perspective of if I was a professional hockey player or a professional, whatever sport people like,
Yeah.
of course, playing their sport is a workout.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they work out in other after hours? Why do they do dry land training? Why do they do hill sprints? Why do they do this? And so when you work in construction, and maybe you can use this with other people as well, you are getting paid to do a physical thing. It is technically a professional athlete, in my eyes, because you're being paid on your performance. And so you have to kind of behave like one because everyone knows the 40-year-old plumber who, like I said, they're like, oh, my back is hurting. I can't move the couch. I can't help you with that. My knees are bust up. And you're like, dude, you're 45. You should be able to help me move this couch. I'm not trying to shame anybody, but like it does become a thing where if you don't fix your own wounds, they are going to bleed onto others, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Yeah, I agree totally with you. And that's again, if we look at it from generations, that's why I do see many young people have so much more awareness of body function, of brain function, of emotional function. Parents are chatting to me regularly about, emotional regulation of their 2-year-old. And it's like, my parents never used language like that. So, and had no awareness of these sorts of things. So,
Oh yeah.
we are evolving very fast as a
Yeah.
species.
Even just the use of the language. I remember I asked my father, he's 68, right? So I remember there was a point where I was struggling with my anxiety and my depression really badly. And I asked my dad, he's not really the greatest person to go to with emotion. I'm very blessed with who my father is. He's taught me a lot. He's amazing. I'm just saying when it comes to an emotional conversation, it's not, unless it's a positive emotion, not the best guy to go to if you want to feel acknowledged. And so I remember asking him, "Hey Dad, did you ever like have anxiety around the business? Like bad years obviously come and go, and you have 3 kids. Like were you ever anxious?" He goes, "No." And I go, "Okay. Were you ever scared and thinking that you didn't really have any other options and thought, fuck, I might need to get a job and what the fuck am I doing?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I felt that all the time." So like it was kind of just like oh, you just don't like this part of your vocabulary. It's just not a thing. Like it's just you took that feeling and he's like, well, that's just how business owners feel. Of course you have to just keep going. There's not even like an acknowledgement of that feeling almost. Yeah, it was just like so cut and dry. He's like, of course I felt like that. What do you think? Like,
And so interesting. Again, in my coaching, I really see that when one of the most useful things I've learned in my coaching is that when we name something, especially when it's naming and it's tamed, as in, oh, I feel some frustration. Just naming reduces the body the body chemistry, settles down the body chemistry. So I call it, many people use the same language, but naming to taming. So we can name to blame, which is where we ramp up. I'm so frustrated by this, blah, blah, blah. The story spins out. Or we can name to tame, as in, I'm feeling frustrated right now. And the body chemistry responds to either one, right? But typically the parents, as you speak about your dad, he probably was not able to name to tame. So the body chemistry that was kept internal, right? So, which is ultimately not helpful for your body chemistry. So, if we name to tame, we're releasing an energy which helps our body chemistry, which then keeps us healthier, basically, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, I 100% agree. That's an interesting thing because I never made that differentiation when it came to that. I've always, that's an interesting thing to think about. Is that something that you think, because obviously you've got, a variety of demographics. Do you find that there's a common theme between, age demographics? Do you think that there's a common theme, between industrial demographics, the industries that they're in? Like, is there a main problem that maybe older gentlemen have? Is there a main problem? Does that differ from a main problem that younger gentlemen have that they are asking you to help them overcome? What's that kind of like?
I think if there's a theme, I really do see that it's still around communication. And, there's still, we're imprinted with hierarchical thinking, right? And so that this person, because they're in this position, they, I have to speak a certain way towards them. And that has loosened up incredibly. If you look at the lifespan, because I'm now 76. So from, from my childhood, to, to the 20-year-olds I'm chatting, or the 25-year-olds I'm chatting, it's loosened up incredibly, but it's still hierarchy. It's still there. It's still, the ability to express oneself with a leader with ease, is so important, and for the leader to listen, with ease as well, is so important. So aspects of communication around that, they're still, even though the hierarchies, the perceptions have shifted about what can and cannot be said, have shifted quite a bit, but it's still running in the background.
Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of an older generation that deals a little bit more with that in terms of being able to open up with how they feel and what they're struggling with. Or you say that the younger generation is more expressive that way. Is that right?
Yeah, the younger generation is definitely more expressive, and still there's room for, for more expression.
Mm-hmm. And is there common themes like we talked about distraction or attention span or these types of skills or sometimes lack thereof? Is there kind of like a common thing where they come to you and say, "Hey, I really need help with this. Like I'm really good at this. My business is going well because of X, Y, and Z, but there's this X factor, or a like whatever other letter, you know what I mean?" But
Yeah. Um, I think if I was to look at common themes, it would boil down to, um, having a problem and not spending the time to identify it. Instead, just running the program. The classic thing you mentioned earlier about stuck in traffic, right? So there's a problem, it's unidentified, and all of a sudden you identify it, and sometimes a solution, you might, the thinking just go poof as soon as you identify it, right? So if I was to look at thematically over the, over all my coaching, people are saying, I have this problem, and I'm asking them to look at it through other lenses, right? So typically, to identify the problem yourself, go, oh, this is a blind in my map of consciousness. This is a blank spot I haven't looked at. Let me look at it.
Okay. And do you have?
Which in your case would be you, in fact, stepping back and going, look, in my day, I get pissed off every day at this traffic. Let me look at that, right? So an exercise would be for you to look in the morning, what is going to upset me today, and how can I look at that differently, right?
Yeah, that's funny. I actually used to. It was a Ryan Holiday thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, the Daily Stoic. He does.
Oh yeah, okay.
I used to listen to his podcast, to his videos a lot. I liked his books a lot. And he has this meditation he suggests doing, which is it comes from the Marcus Aurelius Meditations book, where he talks about like basically meditating on how people will piss you off or because it's always, choosing peace and choosing happiness is real easy until it's easier to get mad, right? So like so meditating on like what kinds of people am I going to interact with that are going to get on my nerves? And then when you interact with them, just remind yourself, hey, it's impossible to have only positive interactions. So I'm bound to have some negative ones. So when you encounter them, you just tell yourself, oh, this is one of those things. This is one of those negative interactions. And then how do you navigate from there? Like, it's like, oh, this is exactly what I had prepared myself for. Okay, I need to take a deep breath. I have to do this. I have to maybe put on a song I like, reset myself, to have a bite of an apple or a fruit, or I don't know what it is, whatever cue you have. But it's like something that just triggers that, okay, I need to hit reset. If it were a video game console, we hit the reset button, right? Like there's air.
That's right. Perfect. This is so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying. That's exactly right.
Do you have in your head, I know it's very hard to make cookie cutter things for these types of situations, but do you have kind of one, two, three things that you suggest to people? It could be routines, it could be exercising, it could be having someone to speak to, it could be all of the above. Do you have like maybe a couple pillars that people can use, actionable, like day one, that can start to make them feel better, point them towards fulfillment? Because fulfillment's not really one of those things that you can start to feel after one day. It's kind of something that it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's the way I would think about it. Especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think the successful part is not who does the best this year, not who does, it's more about who can just stay in the game the longest, right? Like, cause you're basically like, as long as you don't quit, and you don't die, you can keep doing something, you can sell some of your tools, maybe downsize, you can do. So with all of these things, it seems like that's the common thread. It's like whoever just stays in the game the longest is the winner.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like a couple pillars for people, because fulfillment isn't something you can feel in a day, that can help improve how they feel in a short period of time, that you suggest to people?
Yeah, I do for sure. And one of them is the morning. So I mentioned this earlier, but I think the morning routine makes such a big difference. So I'll tell you what I see as the ideal morning routine, right? Is when you first wake up, deliberately plaster a big smile over your face, right? And the next step would be even just to giggle lightly to yourself. So if you can do that first thing in the morning, things flow from there very differently. So then, having smiled and giggled, right, then you're now moving around the house doing the various chores. If you can make those chores fun, as in sing silly songs, be goofy, joke with, if there's a partner around, joke with your partner, just be really deliberately goofy to just make light of life, right? So if we make light of life first thing in the morning, it alters our perception on the whole day. I see that as one of the biggest things we can do, and then the other thing is, in that morning time, look, just as you mentioned earlier, look forward through the day. What could piss me off today? What could get under my skin? And how could I approach it differently? What is the possibility? So just asking, so really it's pre-planning, what could upset me? What's my possibility? And then be gentle, and ideally with a partner, you can even talk about it. So the more it's made into a game of just, and even over exaggerate, so with your partner, you're saying, I'm having a meeting with the plumber at 12, and the plumber is an idiot, and I'm going to get so pissed off with him on a scale of 10, right? Just even over exaggerate. When you get there, you're likely to be quite different because you've already expressed it. So gamify these things. And so the bigger picture is stepping back yourself and viewing your personality as a set of imperfections that are almost humorous. Your anger is humorous. Your the way you react when you drop things is humorous. View your imperfections as humorous. And this then can bring a level of lightness that makes change way, way easier,
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, then start off the day with humor, with a lightness, look forward into the day of what can I shift, and don't be hard. Don't be, when you don't shift, just, oh, okay, I didn't shift. Next time I'll do better. And that's where I think you're using a scale, again, with the partner, in the evening, hey, I was a 10. I really blew it today. I was a 10. But next day it's, oh, I was a 5. And be okay with that. That then eases our way of being. We're much more lighthearted towards ourselves,
Mm-hmm. And have you ever struggled with that? I feel like I've always struggled with that. I always look back at maybe mistakes I've made, money I spent that I shouldn't have, mistreating other people, mistreating my own body, myself. I always look back and I couldn't stop myself from swearing if I tried. It's just like, how the fuck did I do that or think that that was an acceptable thing to do? I even told myself this would be the last day, and then I did it again. The guilt, the shame, the annoyance with yourself, the anger, and ultimately lack of grace. Have you struggled with that? And maybe you've dealt
I
with that.
have in the past. And because of my time in India, I really got to, and so what now I see that I observe the personality. The personality, from my perspective, the personality is my personality. It's not my essence, right? My essence is this joyful, blissful being, right? Meanwhile, I have this personality that messes up and does stupid things and is a joke, basically, right?
Mm,
So the more I'm at ease with my personality, the more that brings forgiveness to the personality, right?
mm,
And
mm,
so through my time in India, I got to know that I am not that, right? I am not the part of me that that made all those things and that did all those things. It's um, and so what's another way of putting it? I guess one of the things I learned in India is that I did those things from my best intelligence in the moment.
mm.
And so that has really resonated with me as a way of dealing with it. Hey, I whatever action it was, I did it with the best intelligence at the moment. I now have updated intelligence, and I can update my intelligence all the time.
Yeah. And is there any, so that actually just in and of itself is, yeah, I've heard that kind of message in different ways. Some people will say like you were doing the best with what you had at the time, you know, and I think a lot of the times the annoying part is I look back and a lot of these mistakes, I go, actually, I kind of knew it was a bad idea. And it's not like I was operating with good intentions. It's like, no, I knew this was a bad idea. And a part of me thought I could get away with it. There was almost like that ignorance of like, this isn't the real world. This is like the demo version of the game. If I mess up, like it was, and then you realize you come to terms with the fact that, oh no, this is real life. There are repercussions, and you know that it is something. But I do I always, I heard recently, I've been saying this over and over and over again, but I heard recently like God will tell you and then he'll show you. And I feel like I'm the type of person that just always needs to be shown the lesson. I'm not the type of guy that's going to listen. I got to touch the stove to see if it really is hot and what hot feels like and how hot can I bear. And, that's kind of the way I've
Yeah.
always been. You draw a line for me and you tell me it's a border, you tell me it's a boundary. I'm going to go inch up to it. I'm going to put my foot on it. I'm gonna slowly get until I'm jumping over it. And then we're going to see what happens. Cause I want to I've always been that way. Socially, physically, I always like to just push my boundaries a little bit. So for me, I had to kind of come to terms with it with like, it's an aspect of my personality. I actually don't feel shame or guilt about. I actually appreciate it about myself a lot of the time. And so sometimes it's going to put me in good situations. And the cost of that is that sometimes it's going to put me in bad situations. And if I can just learn from those and I guess decrease the magnitude of them, then that's kind of the best way to go about it. And not just hate myself of like, why did I say this thing that embarrassed this person or hurt them or, made myself feel shame. It's like, well, the 9 other times it was funny or it broke the ice or it made them feel comfortable or it made them happy or and the 1 out of 10, and that's pretty good odds I'm giving myself. But, sometimes you're going to have to crack a couple eggs to make an omelet. I like omelets. Like it is. I don't know if that is a good way to put it, but are you on a time constraint? Do you have anything that you got to jet to, or it's
No, I'm good.
you're doing good? Is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you wanted to speak about, or anything that I haven't touched on yet?
No, I don't think so. No, I've really enjoyed it so far.
Yeah.
I've been having a blast, actually.
Is there something that's kind of unconventional that you recommend to people that kind of would I'm not talking like anything like too weird or too but anything that people don't really think about often that you recommend where people go, really? That's what you want me to do, but they've seen results with it?
Certainly, see, laughter in the morning is actually difficult for a lot of people,
Right.
And so,
And so what are some of the things or strategies or techniques? Do you tell them to just watch a funny video or do you
yeah, that's right. Yeah, watch a funny, just that's the best one is just watch a funny video, and have it set up the night before so you can't escape it,
Right.
So because the human mind wants to, it's really interesting that we have such difficulty creating humor in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple cats that I feed right away. They usually wake me up around 4:35, and so I usually find a way to just make fun of them, make a laugh with them. Like, 'cause
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it is. Having animals around for me is very helpful because they're never upset. They're never like they're always excited to see you. It's just something that ever since I was a kid, I've always liked having different pets. Like I said, I was a weird nerdy kid, dude. I had like guinea pig when I was a kid, or hermit crabs I liked having. I was just obviously cats and dogs and such, but I always liked animals. I felt like having them around, I didn't feel alone, and I just felt like they were somebody. If you treated them well, like they always appreciated having you around and they're always keen on seeing you. They never walk in the room and just be like, fuck, I really wanted to be alone. Could you just go away? Could you leave me alone? They never really act like that. They like humans do. So for me, that's one of the things I really appreciate having in the morning. And, yeah, I've my morning routine has really, changed over the years because there was times where I thought, okay, I have to run first thing. I have to do weights first thing. I have to meditate first thing. I have to journal first thing or read first thing. There was always like kind of should I be eating before my workout, after my workout? What should I be eating? What's your morning routine like, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I wake up, laugh, and then I sing silly songs as I move around the house. I do some stretching. Um, and normally we're heading out for a walk, almost, pretty fast, and then um, often I'll have breakfast when I come back from like a 45-minute walk, something like that,
Hmm.
Um,
And then the evening routine.
um, in the evening, typically we dance.
Whoa, that's cool.
And yeah, and we're doing salsa and merengue and stuff like that,
Wow.
Um, and um, and then um, I'll I'll do some exercises, for quietening the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So some mantras and things like that, to really quieten the mind before I go to bed, And um, I'm often so everybody's different, but I'm a bit of a so my wife goes to bed earlier or goes
Hmm.
to sleep earlier, and so often I get energized at night, and I'm busy creating something or other, um, so often I just allow the creativity to flow, and then then have a period of time to quieten things down, to quieten my inner space,
Hmm. Yeah, I get that a lot. I'm the exact same. Like I said, we have that kind of culture where it's very easy to just let your brain keep running, keep watching videos, keep watching shows, keep thinking about problems at work, keep thinking about problems in your relationships. There's
Yeah.
endless things to think about, and having a routine or a method of just kind of cleansing that is and I've always been big on like physical locations kind of are the trigger or are the cue for your brain to feel a certain way. So I've had to
Yes, I
tell,
agree with that.
yeah, so I've had to tell myself like I can't have like phones in the bedroom. For me, that's like a big no-no. I can't have screens in the room. I know when I grew up, I had a TV in my room, but as an adult, I had to consciously tell myself like the bedroom is for pretty much two things in the world. There's only two things that I'm going to do in there, and I want to limit it to those two things. I don't want my brain to be thinking, oh, it's lay in bed, it's play video games time. I want my
Mhm.
brain to be primed that, when my head hits the pillow, it's sleep time. It's not play video game time. It's not,
Mhm.
you know, that type of thing. So I've always been big on that, cueing my brain into the action that I wanted to do, and
Mhm.
uh, and just kind of showing up in that way. Do you have like do you recommend? Because obviously not everybody. You're gonna have people that say, "Oh, I don't dance. I don't do rhythm." Is there something that they would do before bed that could help them out with that kind of like when you say the mantras or the meditations or things like that? How do you kind of dip your toe in the water if you're somebody that's brand new to that stuff?
Mhm. Yeah, good, great question. And so, um, a gratitude journal is I think often that's one of my recommendations. Is a gratitude journal is a really good way of bringing one into a really positive space, So that's a sort of super practical, super. That's It seems like everybody I chat with, people who have gratitude journals, it's really they report over and over again. It helps them out,
Mhm.
Um, and then there's all sorts of meditations on things like Headspace or YouTube, which are just music, a guided music meditation for 10 minutes or even 5 minutes. Makes a massive difference.
Mhm. Yeah, that's hilarious. A long time ago, and when YouTube was fresh, and I still had one of those big chunky iPods, I uh, I I don't know if this is legal or not, but we'll say I'm joking for all intents and purposes on this podcast. It's an entertainment, okay? This is in the entertainment category, but I would rip like YouTube videos into like MP3 files, and
Oh yeah, okay.
there would be like inspirational speeches or just like I remember there was this old one where it was like one of the first introductions to kind of an Eastern philosophy where it was kind of the vibe of like, I am not a wave in the ocean. The wave is the ocean. So I'm kind of like part of, and that was a profound message for me at the time when I was like 19 years old. And so it was one of those things where I remember I was struggling with something. A friend of mine sent me the video. The video hit home with me. It was like a 5 minute clip. So I downloaded it, I put it on my iPod, and I'd listen to it every day as I was driving. I was in trade school at the time, and I would just listen to it every single day, whether I believed it or not. There was some days where I wouldn't even pay attention. It would just be on, and I'd just be having it on, playing in my mind subconsciously. And then there'd be other days where I was like white knuckling it, listening and hanging on to every word. And just like having it repeat over and over and over again was one of those things where I felt more connected. I felt more whole and just kind of like, as long as I can listen to that video. It sounds stupid and weird, but that's just the way that my brain works. I've always been that kind of, like Pavlov's dog, like the cue, the habit, and then the reward.
Oh, I see. Yes, yeah. Actually, I've done the same thing too with videos. I've set them up and played them all night. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
What do you think is the weirdest thing you've tried? And when it comes to like optimizing your brain or your body, has there been any? I listened to a podcast recently, and I'm not suggesting this at all, but I heard a guy talking about extended fasting periods and what that can do to, I'm trying to think of a way to say this, but basically drink your own urine. I don't know if that makes sense, but it rubbed me the wrong way. I'm not suggesting you've done it, but has there been obscure things that you've tried that you would never have thought, I'll do that have helped you out?
Well, I have drunk my own urine for a few months, and
Okay,
I
you've
don't
done the
think I
whole
knew
pee
this.
therapy thing.
I'm sorry.
It's I heard it described as pee therapy, but you've done that?
Yes, yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
And I don't, I didn't notice a big difference, so I wouldn't, I'm sure we're welcome to that one. And um, actually, laughter meditation I found is super good. It's one of the things I would recommend.
Okay. Yeah, because
Um,
I'm always, like I said, I'm tinfoil hat to the bone. I've always been like that. I've never really uh I've always thought there's more than what meets the eye, I guess I could
mhm,
say.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I listened to a lot of different like health podcasts, mental health, physical health, and that was always one of the things that and there's always I'm listening to somebody and I'm like, wow, this guy, everything seems like cut and dry. It seems so simple. It seems so, and then they'll say something so obscure like that, and I'm like, I would have never thought to try that. I would have never thought to, but I know there's obviously a million ways to skin a dead cat, right? So there is really just like unlimited options out there. And it's one of those things that always interests me, piques my interest of like, what are people willing to do? And what are things that people actually reap benefits from? Like the fasting thing was really something that when I first heard about it, like, I'm never going to try that until I started to actually think, okay, and then I'll try intermittent fasting, and then I'll try a couple days of fasting, or I'll try a water fast. And that the guy that I was talking about recently, he does dry fasts, he does the pee therapy, he does a lot of different things. And, whether it helps detox or not, it's always something that, there's got to be, it's it sounds maybe obscure or crazy, but so does going to a doctor and getting a prescription for a drug and then just doing that drug every day, thinking, oh, I just had a Prozac deficiency. I was just, it turns out all I needed was 10 milligrams of Prozac and my life's better. I was just born with a Prozac deficiency, it turns out. That sounds crazier to me, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, so but back to the laughter meditation. It's one of the things I recommend because I would teach it too in meditation groups, and people would have super strong experiences from it. And then another one that we did in meditation groups, which is super powerful. I don't know if you've ever heard of a gibberish meditation. So let me explain what this is. This is where you can at home, depending. So it's making noise, right? And so the way you do it at home is you go into the bathroom, you probably go in the shower, you put on some really loud music, or ideally, yeah, really loud music. And then you close your eyes, you connect with anger or frustration in your body, and then you start making sound and let your body move. And often your body will respond to the feelings. So your arms will start to shake, you'll start to bang your legs, you'll start to bounce up and down. And then the sounds that come out, start making them very deliberately, as in blah, 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 blah. But pretty soon it might change to guttural growls. Just go with it and set a timer for like 15 minutes and just observe what happens in the process. It's really, it's an energetic release that can be super profound. And having taught thousands of people in meditation, we do it in big groups of like 100 people. Often people report to me, at the end of it, I went into the quietest space that I've ever gone in my life,
I was about to ask it how long the anger lasts, because I would find myself laughing at myself after probably, there would be like a noise I'd make. I just literally envisioned myself doing that as you said that. And there would be like a noise I'd make where I go, why did I make that noise? I just laugh.
Right, perfect. That's it. That's what would happen. And then just to go into silence, having burst into laughter, then stop, sit down, go into silence, and you might find you're in the most amazing silent space,
Yeah. Were you always I've always been kind of a class clown type of person. I was always like, that was the thing. I never felt anxiety around saying things to people or making a joke in front of the class. Some people say speaking in front of others was their biggest fear. I'd be like, dude, being looked at and being quiet would be my biggest, like, I need to talk to fill the space. That was kind of the way. And so I've always kind of looked for humor in that stuff. I've always loved, comedians. I've always liked that kind of thing. Is this kind of more helpful for people that naturally gravitate towards these things where they are the class clown, or is this more helpful? I think of people like, I think of my little sister who's very the opposite of who I am in a personality. She's much more reserved, much more quiet, much more sympathetic and empathetic to those around her. She's one of those people where at the first time you meet her, you're like, oh, this person's so quiet. But then around people she's comfortable with, she's much more. Is this more beneficial for people that are naturally subdued that way? Or maybe that's not the best word, but I think you get what I mean.
Yeah. No, I think it is. I'll give you an example. Having taught this to thousands of people, there's one lady who came to me before the meditation and said, I'm, I believe that love conquers all. And I have a guru in India who's told me focus only on love conquering all, right? So all my life, and she's now 50, I've spent, my life is devoted to love conquering all. So this meditation will have no use for me. I have no anger, no frustration. So I said, well, just try it anyway, So this is in a group, and we had everybody blindfold so they couldn't see each other. So she's blindfolded and she starts off, and I'm walking around the group watching, and then I see her starting to twitch, and I see her legs starting to twitch. And 5 minutes in, her voice has gone up 4 octaves, and her legs are flying around. At the end of it, she comes to me and says, I always thought that I was loving all, but in fact, in me is just a huge amount of suppressed anger, which I've been using logic to overcome. That I must love all.
What would be a way that someone could logically overcome? Like I'm just,
I guess thinking just, hey, I have to love this person, so I'll bottle the anger,
Yeah.
So, and many people from my experience, many people bottle emotions, so really this is uncorking the emotion.
Do you think that that's something that maybe women struggle with more? I feel like maybe men suppress sadness and women suppress anger. Is that fair to say? Would you think, or do you think that there's no difference?
I've seen it work with both men and women. And yeah, so I've seen it work with both men and women. And um, if I was to sort of categorize, male versus female, often what I see is that um, the class again, this is coming back to coaching, right? So the classic conflict is a female is expressing something, and with emotion, the male thinks he has to fix something. So
Right.
so the male moves into fix mode. Meanwhile, the female just wants to be heard. It just wants to say, "Oh, so you're feeling upset about this," and then the female can go, "Yes, I am."
If my fiance was here and you say this right now, she'd be laughing her ass off at me. That is exactly what we talk about all the time. She's like, "Why are you trying to fix everything? I'm just trying to tell you."
Mm-hmm. Great. So there you go. It's really just, and this is the male. This is the males are wired for fixing, and the females are attempting to express.
Hmm. Have you struggled with that in your relationship, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, yeah, I have. And again, some of the best coaching I got on this topic was um, was a friend of mine who said, all you have to do is ask the female, is there anything I can do in this, or do you just want me to listen?
That's a way nicer way to say it than what I say. I say, you want a solution or you just looking to vent? I'm an asshole that way. That's hilarious. I like your version better.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
good.
often the female just says, "Hey, I just want to be heard."
Yeah. Yeah. You probably just saved my relationship, so I appreciate that.
Good, good, good.
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, hey, out of respect for your time, I'm gonna let you go. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention? Any message you'd like to leave people with before we get out of here? And I just want to let you know I really do appreciate your time. I appreciate you letting me pick your brain and kind of first hear about your timeline and then just kind of poke and prod at weird things that I like to ask about. But so I just want to say thank you very much for giving me your time today and sharing your thoughts and opinions with me and giving me some grace as I fumble through my thoughts. But is there anything that you'd like to share with people? Any message you'd like to kind of leave them with? Anything that they could chew on? And then one more time, tell people like where they can find you and support you the best.
Okay, yeah. So really, um, life is this beautiful game, and the more we can gamify life and look at our personality as, with all its flaws, as a work in progress that we're having fun playing with, and and so let's look through the lens. What is possible for me in this situation? What is how can I express myself, or how can I be in this situation fulfilled in the situation? And so really aim for fulfillment, and then how to get hold of me. My website is enlighteningadventures.com, and you're welcome to send me an email and I'll reply. And yeah, just life is this beautiful exploration, and so enjoy the exploration.
I love that. I love that. Well, again, thank you very much for everything that you do. Thank you for taking the time with me today. And I look forward to chatting with you again. You have an open door anytime you want to come on here and share anything or you just want to chat. I'm going to tell you right now, I'll probably be barking up this tree again. So I hope that
Okay,
I hope that we can connect again in the future and hope that you're looking forward to it like I am.
Yeah. Great. Thank.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, sir. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys soon.
Yeah. Thanks. See you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Much love.